you think there is something about, and we touched on this before, I think, but the psychology of being, I know I've criticised Harry a lot, but I think it's quite apt, the word spare, because you're brought up with this idea that you're better than everybody else. And then your actual experience of it is that, well, you're not, because there's only one person who's being prepared for all of that, and you're just on the side.
I don't buy the spare argument, because you could say that Princess Anne was spare. She was number 2. Prince Edward was spare. But they've created proper lives for themselves. They do good works and have really caused very little trouble. And you think of previous generations, Bertie, who was the younger brother of King Edward VIII, again, a very dutiful, even before he became king, sort of prince. So I don't buy that. But I think they are. Andrew is just by nature, I think he feels entitled. He's a prince of the blood. You respect, his mother's the queen. And he's not bright enough to realize that, you need to earn your position and earn respect. It doesn't come to you automatically. So he kind of lives off because he's got nothing else really, off the fact that he is a prince of the blood. And he's someone who's never really grown up. You talked about the teddy bears, the 30 teddy bears laid out on the bed. There's even a plan so the teddy bears can be put back after the bed's made in the right order.
Are they on the bed then?
They're on the bed. They're lined up there.
So every day that has to happen?
Yeah. But, lots of stories of staff being told to, rather than open the curtains himself, brings them up from 3 floors below. Got stories of policemen being asked to pick up his golf ball when he's driven it down the fairway. He's just a very inconsiderate, selfish man, rather boorish, which is why Fergie divorced him in the first place. It's ridiculous to suggest they'll get back together. They both have their own separate love lives and have, since they separated. In fact, she was having affairs long before they even separated.
If I might labour the spare point, I know that there are examples of people who have just been dutiful regardless, or whatever it might be. But there's, of course, Andrew, then there's Harry, and then I think Edward. Which one was that? Which number? Edward and Wallace Simpson.
Well, Edward VIII, but he was the older brother.
Yes, but was always sort of a bit of a spare, wasn't he? Like psychologically.
No. He was the blue-eyed boy. He was Prince of Wales. He was very charismatic and popular, and gave that all up, and then got marginalised. But no, I don't believe that. Andrew, realised, I think clearly when Charles got married and had children, that he was moving down the line of succession. But that was probably going to be inevitable. As indeed. I think Harry must have realised that, it's very unlikely his brother wouldn't get married and have children.
How far down are they then? So Andrew, what would have to happen for Andrew to be king?
Well, Andrew at one point did think he might come back as regent. He had this wild idea with Fergie that King Charles would abdicate, would never take the throne because of all the scandals in his life, that William would be too young because he wasn't yet 18 to take the throne, and therefore Andrew would have to step in as a regent. And that's one of the reasons that supposedly that Fergie kind of clung close to Andrew.
Wow.
She had this dream that she would be, queen. And she had another mad dream that she was going to marry John F. Kennedy Jr., that he would run for president, he would win, and she would become First Lady. So they all have these wild fantasies. But yes, they've certainly, Andrew, I think, thought that he might get in there at one point.
Now you've got what? So it's Charles, then William. Are the kids too young then?
Well, they're all in the order of succession. So, including Charlotte now. So, you go all the way down through to Louis, then you go back up to Harry and down, and then you come back up to Andrew. So he's, I think, 12th now.
Oh.
So he's quite some way off.
Yeah. Okay. And Harry is what, like 5th or 6th?
Well, if you think that you've got William as 1, George as 2, the Charlotte is 3, and Louis is 4. Yes, he's 5th.
He's 5th. Yeah, that's not going to happen either. And I think that's part of why they left. They were like, okay, well, there's nothing doing here. We're off to America and we're going to make our own celebrity.
Well, I think they went off because they wanted to be half in and half out, and they wanted all the benefits of being the royal family, doing it like an a la carte menu, doing the bits that they liked doing and interested them, and still on the side being able to make money and everything else, and they wanted clearly the protection and the income that came from being associated with the royals. But I think if they genuinely wanted to be private citizens, they should give up their titles. And they should quietly go and live in California, and not insist on having titles to their children.
Yeah, I saw. Was it recently the royal family finally dropped them from the website?
Yes, I mean, the royal family would say this was a long-standing thing, but it's taken some time for it to be implemented. But yes, I mean, clearly they've been downgraded. They're still on the website, but with just less detail, so, which suggests that there was a moment where they thought they might come back, and now I think it's pretty clear that rift is very unlikely to be healed.
But they still use that name. I see it all the time, the Sussexes and this American Riviera Orchard. Have you seen that? That's her new company. It feels like they, very much like Andrew, are using the name of the royal family to go about their own business endeavours.
Yeah, and it's the Duke of Windsor did exactly the same. Opened supermarkets, endorsed linen and cutlery. And that's always been a big problem. They tried this with the Duchess of Edinburgh before or just after she got married to Prince Edward. Allowed her to run her PR firm and be a member of the royal family, but it just didn't work. People took advantage of that. She got caught in a similar sting to Fergie, and they realised that you either devote your time full time to the royal family, or to business. People like Lord Lindley, for example, have run a very successful business, woodwork business, and then later as chairman of one of the auction houses. But he doesn't have royal duties. He's not on the public purse. And perhaps there are people who bought his furniture because he's Lord Lindley, but to a large extent, they bought it on the strength of his qualities as a craftsman.
So there is a way to do it, and I feel like even if Meghan and Harry did really leave all royal duty, they got completely out of there, they'd still be able to. They're still pretty famous already by virtue of having been in the royal family, and they could do it that way without getting so much criticism from people like me.
Well, yeah, if they were doing things that were based on their talents, that would be one thing. But I think a lot of it is just down to celebrity endorsement in effect, and that's what running this website is all about. She's a public figure. She's going to get lots of hits. People want to buy things connected with her. Yeah. And Fergie's been doing this for years. I mean, she's been selling apart from tea, jams, and endorsing all sorts of things. And, she's not there as a chat show host or promoting cranberry juice because she's Sarah Ferguson. She's there because she's the Duchess of York.
Yeah. I think they wanted that, Meghan and Harry. They wanted to be extremely talented and to be seen for their talent and ability to write movies and books and these kinds of things. And it looks like the industry has just turned around and said, you guys are terrible. You don't work very hard. You're grifters, as Spotify said. Get out, and now all they can do is just trade off their name.
Well, and that's been the problem with Fergie. She keeps doing pilots for chat shows, and then they never really go anywhere because she's not a very good interviewer. And there's a certain celebrity element to it, and she's famous. And one of my concerns is, her celebrity comes from being a royal and also from her charity work. And so much of the charity work, which I don't dispute, it does a lot of good. But at the same time, it's a very good way of burnishing her reputation. It's a very good way of meeting people. And lots of stories of going out to Romanian orphanages, followed by a film crew and hello, and then giving an interview to Hello for large sums of money, with that money not going to charity.
Yeah. Oh God. Those who doesn't, they keep the money.
Yes, there's a lot of this. And that when she did her children's books, she said she would give money to charity. It turned out it was a very small percentage. She says she's giving her fee when she appears in a chat show to charity, but then it doesn't talk about the back end payments from the foreign rights. So, she's pretending to do one thing and actually other things are going on behind the scenes. She's not totally open, as I said, he isn't either.
What do you make of okay, so when Kate had this photoshopped photo that came out, I read in page 6 that sources close to Meghan have come out and said, "Oh, Meghan would never make a mistake like this." To what degree do we trust sources close to Meghan? Is that Meghan and Harry? Is that how they put out their news, or could this be complete flim-flam invented by a newspaper?
I think both. I mean, I think a lot of newspapers do invent stuff. A lot of newspapers clearly have very good links with members of the royal family or courtiers who they pay, staff, and it works both ways. You know, Fergie, for example, was leaking lots of stories about her divorce, and particularly during the negotiations, and pretending she was a great victim and hadn't been paid enough, and she was, you know, sent down Christmas to stay at Wood Farm when they were all having lunch at the Sandringham. And, you know, they used the press and the press used them. But no, I don't think we can trust any of the sources. And I think one of the sad things about the picture furore was that there was people trusted Kate and her Kensington Palace. And I think that trust was broken. There was a sense that they weren't being given the full story. But, you know, all PR people are trying to spin the story to make their clients look better. So, and that shouldn't surprise us. And the job of the press is to try and get below that. But we kind of operate a lobby system here where the press the royal press is kind of dependent on the control, because it's so heavily controlled, for access and for stories. And so they'll kind of do the bidding of the PR people in the palace. And it's very hard to write about them as an outsider, as I try to do, by talking to other people, by verifying things through documents or whatever it is. But a lot of royal correspondents just basically have fed stuff and they put it down and don't challenge it. And I think that's sort of what was happening a lot. And now, of course, with AI and with Photoshop, things can be played around with. You know, there's one argument that the news agencies made a lot of money by taking the photographs of the royals and selling them on. And by Kate taking the photos, they didn't have that opportunity. But, you know, their reputation's on the line. And if they are trying to promote pictures which are clearly not accurate, then, you know, it's understandable that they'll make a fuss. And it's, you know, it may be small things like just making sure that you've got pictures of all the children smiling. But, you know, there is a danger that you take people out, you stick people in who really weren't there. And that's controlling the narrative. And it's what I would say curating the story or censoring the past and censoring the present. And, you know, that there should be complete transparency in the way that the palace and the press deal with each other.
Do you think that Prince Andrew's reckoning will come?
Well, I think, yes, it might. You know, we have more depositions still to come out. He's been caught telling lies. There may be more stories. There may be more victims who come forward. Virginia Giuffre, I understand, is in a position to write a book. And so that must be always hanging over them. So I don't think the story is finished at all. And it just needs a few people to come forward, a policeman perhaps under oath, because all the police protection officers will know exactly what was going on. You know, he must worry that the story, you know, if there is something to hide, that it might eventually emerge. And clearly, you know, investigators like me looking at his business dealings just need to find a few people who've done business and had requests like the diplomat asking for the blondes to begin to change the perception of him, which I have to say isn't particularly high at the moment, but might go lower.
Could he end up in prison?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, you know, the royals are in effect beyond the law, it seems. I mean, the Queen, because everything, you know, she is the courts, in a sense, are her courts. The monarch can't ever be in trouble like that, but there's no reason why members of the royal family couldn't. I mean, Princess Anne has been charged, I think, with speeding and also with having a dangerous dog. So, I mean, at a low level, but I mean, whether, you know, on serious offences that could happen it would in completely uncharted territory there.
It would be a huge story around the world.
Well, if the case is there, and I mean, you know, there have been, you know, the people, for example, could bring a private prosecution against him if there was enough evidence. And so, you know, we've seen it with Trump, you know, just the legal problems he's had over the last few months. You know, if the material begins to emerge, however powerful you are, you know, the courts find a way of at least charging you.